The last Russian emperor was an exemplary family man. Nicholas and Alexandra had 5 children. 4 daughters named Olga, Tatiana, Maria, Anastasia, and a son, Alexei. The heir to the throne was a hemophiliac, which meant his blood failed to clot. It's a rare condition, and a minor injury could have killed him. He was under the constant supervision of tutors and doctors. This hindered Nicholas II during the last 12 years of his reign. The demonic figure of Grigory Rasputin emerged solely due to the heir's illness. His role in the royal family still isn't clear to this day.
Rasputin's influence on the crown prince was like a sedative. He, as many people at the time, believed he could cast a spell on his blood. Besides, Rasputin possessed some of the same qualities as a psychotherapist, if we speak in modern terms, and this explains his influence.
Many modern-day admirers of Nicholas II visit this church at a remote cemetery in Moscow. It's the only church in the capital named after Tsar Nicholas II. Its Father Superior, Mikhail Ardov, studied the history of the House of Romanov. Judging from the monarch's memoirs, the last emperor considered going into the church.
He was a profound believer in God. His family was the church at home. His attitude to the church was very serious. He glorified many saints.
Nicholas II and his family were canonized in the 20th century as martyrs who died for their faith. Mikhail Ardov's church has many icons depicting the royal family. But there's one icon which the priest praises above all.
Its meaning is the Tsar takes off his crown and a martyr's crown appears on his head. His abdication was a Christian and a sensible act.
The Russian-Japanese War of 1904 to 1905 was a trial for Nicholas II. The Russian Empire was defeated. It lost most of its navy and vast territory in the Russian Far East. The First World War broke out in Europe in 1914. Russia was one of the first countries to join as part of the Entente, a strategic alliance forged with Britain and France. But the first months of the war revealed that the Russian army was considerably weaker than the enemies, namely Germany and Austria-Hungary. Their armed forces were superior in terms of weapons, equipment, and technical skills. The Tsar took personal control of the Russian army, and he often visited the front. But there were a series of military failures on all of the fronts, and the number of casualties continued to rise.
In the long run, the fact he was a patriot, a brave and loving man, and in many ways a decent person, turned out to be historically insignificant.
The First World War seriously affected the Russian Empire's economy. The country faced chronic food shortages. Strikes and protests began on the home front. A bourgeois revolution occurred in Russia on February the 27th, 1917. The monarchy was overthrown, and the country was declared a republic. Nicholas II abdicated in favor of his brother Mikhail 3 days later on his way back from the front. But Mikhail also abdicated just hours after Nicholas signed the manifesto. The Russian monarchy was legally abolished.
The war was ongoing. He was the commander-in-chief. It's a right which carries huge responsibility. And in this capacity, the sovereign abdicates. He leaves the army and the country to the mercy of fate.
Nicholas II and his family spent the last months of their lives under arrest. A socialist revolution led by Vladimir Lenin brought the Bolsheviks to power in Russia in November of 1917. Soviet rule was established in the country. And from that moment on, the Russian emperor and his family became political prisoners. They were incarcerated in a small private mansion in the town of Yekaterinburg in the Urals. An armed convoy watched their every step. This is how the Russian film director Karen Shakhnazarov portrayed the last Russian emperor's final days. He planned to screen the tragic story during the Soviet era, but decided to realize his project in 1991, a time of huge political change in Russia.
The
film didn't aim to restore Nicholas II or judge the Bolsheviks, because there is no right and wrong in a revolution. But some political groups perceived it very differently.
Karen Shakhnazarov's film is called Regicide, which means the killing of a king. The famous actor Malcolm McDowell played the lead role. McDowell plays Bolshevik Yakov Yurovsky, who is believed to have killed Nicholas II and his son, the Crown Prince Alexei. It was the first time that the story of the execution of the royal family had been adapted to the big screen. It was the night of July 16th, 1918. Everything happened behind closed doors. The Tsar and his family were executed without a trial, a decision made by Soviet executive organizations. The Romanovs weren't actually put to death by official executioners. Instead, they were shot by a selected group of people.
I believe it's one of the most dramatic episodes in world history. But far from everything has been said and written about it. This event is as important as the executions of Mary Stuart or Louis XVI. These themes will always stir artists.
In 1994, when the political climate in Russia was undergoing dramatic changes, 9 skeletons were discovered in a mass grave close to Yekaterinburg. DNA testing, which was 99% accurate, revealed that the bones belonged to members of the Romanov family. In 1998, a state funeral was held for the last emperor, Nicholas II, at the Cathedral of St. Peter and Paul in St. Petersburg, in the famous Romanov crypt. A workshop near Moscow which produces large religious icons. It belongs to the Russian Orthodox Church and makes plaques and icons on a large scale. Yelena Yeliseva painted the first icon of Nicholas II and his family.
It was a very difficult commission. The only things I had to work with were photographs. I already had the photographs, because I worship the royal martyrs.
Yelena's icon has been copied many times for cathedrals across Russia. The Novotikhvinsky monastery in the Urals also produced a series of icons of the Russian royal family. When the Romanovs were being held in Yekaterinburg, nuns from the monastery gave them food, and they may have been the last people to see them alive.
People ask us to paint icons of the royal family. Our monastery is in the Urals. Many people only want nuns to paint the icons, because they are in the place where the family was shot.
The nuns who helped the Romanov family have all died by now. The artists who produced the icons cast molds from sculptured busts of the Tsar and his family. It's the most effective way to achieve a true likeness. The workshop's reputation has spread far and wide. The nuns even receive orders on the internet, both from Russia and abroad. The last commission was from the United States, and it's a joy for the nuns to carry out this work. To them, Nicholas II and his family are saints.
Николай не сделал ничего чудес каких-то.
Nicholas did not perform miracles. He did not bring anybody back to life. He was a man of his time. He fought with dignity, and he accepted his fate. He abdicated his crown because the fate of his homeland was more important to him than his own.
Судьба Родины важнее, чем его собственная судьба.
He never wanted to become the ruler of 1/6 of the planet, but he had to become him. Nicholas II never had a thirst for power. He never believed that Russia would lose its Orthodox monarchy. The last emperor never imagined that the state would collapse, nor that his own subjects would become the executioners. He has found a place in the history books, but the question still remains: who really was Nicholas II? In part, the answer is that he was the last representative of his dynasty, the last Tsar and autocratic ruler, the last master of the Russian Empire.